Hello and welcome to this edition of Tech Talk. My special guest this week is Josh Callaghan. Now, Josh is the COO of the Real Estate Institute of Queensland. He's the co-founder of FinTech Queensland, and he is a digital strategist. We couldn't get anyone better for the show, could we? Josh has a proven track record as an innovator and an entrepreneur. His role at the REIQ will certainly see him front and centre at staying ahead of the cutting edge of technology. Josh, welcome to the show. Nice to have your company.
Thank you, Kevin.
Let me firstly say, last year was a very big year for you. Saw your elevation within the institute there. A very busy year, and my guess is that 2020 has started pretty much the same. Can I just ask you, what do you see ahead for this year as the biggest challenges for our industry?
Yeah, I think the industry is probably still reeling a lot from what we've seen as a bit of a market correction, particularly in the southern states. What's largely remained flat here in Queensland, but it has meant that stock levels are down. What that's sort of led to really is a margin squeeze. So we're hearing a lot of businesses are just finding it hard to find the cash that they need to invest in new learning, development of their staff, new staff, and so on. So I think that'll be probably challenge number one is around margin, and I think challenge number two is really around bringing that new stock to market. Regenerating the confidence in the market that it is a great time to sell, that there is still demand out there, and sort of starting to really feed that stock and that turnover back into the market.
Yeah, well, tech certainly played a big part in how real estate has changed in the last couple of years. Really, I think if you look back at 2019, the changes then just in that 1 year have been quite outstanding. Do you see, question without notice, do you see the younger agents coming through, the ones who are embracing technology, are they the ones who are really pushing our industry forward in terms of a better perception within the community?
You know what? I'm not sure. I mean, that would probably make logical sense. I'm not sure that that's what I've certainly witnessed on the ground. We run a big tech conference, a real tech conference each year with a few hundred people from the industry that come to hear about whatever the latest tech is, what the trends are that are happening in the market. And to be honest, I see a lot of well-established principals, owners, and salespeople, and property managers for that matter, that are well established, certainly not necessarily the young crowd, that are really keen to engage in tech. And I think partly because tech becomes, in some part at least, a solution to some of the problems that their businesses are facing.
Okay, well, knowing that's the case, can I just then get your thoughts about this year and what do you see as the prop tech innovations that are ahead of us and how they're going to impact our industry?
Sure thing. So I think one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of lately has been around providing frictionless tenancy agreements, I would call it. So basically trying to take all of the friction points and the pain out of the process of someone wanting to apply for apply to tenant a property. And that starts right from the application phase. On the property manager side, that means, more automation, more integration and pre-population of things like applications and vetting, vetting tenants and sort of getting the first bit of bond and so on through. I think, I've seen a lot of new competitors come to the market, or new prop tech firms come to the market with pretty much that sort of that end-to-end view on how do we help property managers streamline and make that process of finding and onboarding tenants a lot easier. So I think that will definitely be one of the big themes that we'll continue to see grow. Another one that's of quite a bit of interest, but I think is probably still in its infancy, but we'll hear more and more about it this year. Will be iBuyers. So it's something that's quite big and popular over in the US, and this is basically they're basically algorithmic property buyers. So where a computer will come to a valuation of a property and actually be able to make that offer to a potential seller, so that they have a surefire cash offer ready to go if they choose to take it. Now, we have seen some of those sort of propositions come to market here in Australia, not so much on the iBuyer side of things, so that automated front, but certainly There's a couple of places that will come out, do an appraisal within 24 hours and make an offer on your house more or less straight away. And so I think that's definitely starting to change the landscape of the way property is bought and sold over in the US. I think we'll see more and more of that here. I think the only thing holding it back at the moment is probably awareness of that category and awareness of that service. So I expect to see a lot more of those come online this year. I think the one of the other trends that we'll see is as margins have been squeezed in agencies, that forces more of the conversation around automation, outsourcing, streamlining processes, and a lot of that sort of conversation. And so we've already seen in our own personal experience, our introduction of DocuSign into our forms platform, RealWorks, has been overwhelmingly positive in its response from the industry. And really what we're hearing and seeing is what people are telling us anecdotally is that it's just making the process of getting multiple applicants, multiple landlords, for example, in the case of a tenancy, and then the principal signing that form. It takes that from what can be sometimes days, even weeks if you're working with remote landlords and so on, down to minutes. To get that all executed, contract on foot, and ready to move on to more important things. So that, I think that will continue to be a focus of the prop tech industry. So really what we're talking about is a bunch of smart people using technology to solve problems. And when I spoke earlier about friction points, particularly with the application process for renters, I think, anyone who's close enough to property management knows there's certainly plenty of friction points there that can be smoothed out. So I think we'll see more of that. And then I think, one of the trends or things we've been seeing over the last few years has been a lot more investment in technology relating to photography, 3D walkthroughs, and so on and so forth. I think that will continue to evolve. I think what we've seen is there's sort of, like in any tech space, fintech certainly the same a number of years ago. Other tech spaces have a very similar sort of cycle where a need is found, a number of solutions come to market. There's then a number of copycat solutions or people trying to do the same thing in slightly different ways. Ultimately, at some point, though, that sort of category matures and starts consolidating to one or two real key players that are offering, hitting the sweet spot on what the industry wants and what the real problem is that needs to be solved. And I think that's exactly what we'll start to see now in the photography walkthrough and sort of experience space. We'll see it happening on two fronts, I think. One will be in the way that we present products on offer, so the way we present stock and being able to use things like virtual reality walkthroughs and so on. The other will be in the way that we take people through. So we've seen people, for example, at our tech day, we had Home Live present, where they've utilised technology to be able to do a walkthrough to many people rather than sort of on a one-by-one basis. So I think they're the main streams of change that I see coming through prop tech in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I want to dig into one of them that you mentioned there, and that was iBuyer, and been watching that one very, very carefully. I just want to explain a little bit about what iBuyer is. It's the point where a seller can actually achieve a faster sale, and that raises a question for me, which I'll come to in just a moment. But the model is, we will offer to buy your property, here is the price. So it's for those who want to get a quick sale, and then they'll turn around and resell it on that's the understanding, and achieve a fairly high commission, can be as high as around 10%.
Yeah.
Have I got that correct?
You've got that correct. Just in context of that, it can be as high as 10%, but that's in the context of in the US where the standard commission rate's around 5% for a real estate agent, which obviously isn't quite the same context that we operate in here. But you're exactly right on the concept of what they are, what service they provide. Yeah,
it raises the question for me about the skill of the agents. So, I mean, how do agents compete with something like that? When it comes down to it, it's really a matter of a quick sale as opposed to getting the top amount, which the question for me is that, we're so embedded, not so much in Queensland, but in other parts of Australia, in the auction system, which is touted to achieve the highest possible price, not necessarily in the shortest possible time. So that's where the catch-22 is. What are we going to be doing? Chasing a better price, which means longer days on market, or are we going to reduce our days on market to achieve a better sale and not so much at a higher price? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that is like any tech disruption that comes into the market. The existing industry is going to need to adjust and sort of mold to that. I think ultimately it still comes down to the buying and selling, or in this case, selling your own home, your property that involves contracts and everything else is still a very complex process. It's still a big bubble of unknown for a lot of people, and they're probably not confident hitting that button on something like an iBuyer, particularly in Australia. And so I think the role of the agent is still 100% there, and clearly the agent provides a lot more advice, a lot more ability to, I guess, help that buyer through the process. So I think it's going to be a long time until we see any sort of wide-scale adoption on it, because a lot of people are going to require a lot of other people to have gone through that process successfully to get it. Yeah. I think the game's won, though, on discussion around getting the optimal price. I mean, we know that 5 or 10% in where the median property prices are in most capital cities, at least, 5 or 10% is a big difference. That can be your stamp duty on the next house. So it is material, and so therefore, and it's not like they're offering the service for free, and so that does become a really good proposition for well-established real estate agents to have that conversation with the potential sellers.
Yeah, no doubt it will fit a certain part of the not so much the industry, but a certain part of the community who want to get that quick sale. But I do think that a lot of smart agents are probably going to adopt it as an alternative. In other words, they'll offer both services, the traditional service that we know now, and by the way, we can also offer this service. So there will be a certain number of agents who may elect to do that, Josh, I would think.
Yeah, that's right. That's certainly what they're seeing in the US.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right. Yep. Final question for you. The various institutes around Australia have sort of played with technology over the years, some very successfully and some are still operating websites. Can you tell me what you think is probably the most meaningful role for the institute, or any institute, that it can play? Let's talk about the REIQ's role in Queensland. What meaningful role do you see it playing?
So I think there's probably two things. So the first point is, as an institute, really, I think the most meaningful way that we can help tech and the industry sort of come together is actually to create a really strong ecosystem that helps to expose the emerging tech and the trends and sort of comment on what differences they make to the general landscape, but then to also provide training support and I guess the insight to the industry to be able to work out how to utilize that tech to make their service better. Ultimately, a lot of the tech that's coming to market in this space at the moment, at least, is not really there to disrupt the agent. Most of the tech that I'm seeing come to this space is actually to assist the agent get better efficiencies and improve the way that they operate. So really, our role is about making sure that those connections happen so that agents get a better outcome. From a role, though, of outside of the institute, obviously, the REIQ, as do many other REIs in Australia, also offer a forms product and other products and services to the market. In our forms product, for example, we've gone as far as championing a new technology into that, which is the use of executing contracts on the blockchain. We've actually now executed quite a number, almost 100 now in our beta test, real live tenancies on a blockchain. Which is certainly in Australia first and a world first, depending on exactly how you look at it. But so our role is also then to understand what are those emerging technologies, how do they serve the industry, and if they serve the industry well, then we should be putting our money where our mouth is and actually championing that to market, which is exactly what the REIQ have done.
Josh, great talking to you, my friend. Thank you very much for your time. Josh Callaghan is the COO for the Real Estate Institute of Queensland. Josh, thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you, Kevin.